At some point after 40, something becomes clear. Not all at once, not like a sudden revelation. More like you walk into a room and realize you've been standing in it your whole life, and only now are you actually looking at the walls. And what you see changes everything. I was thinking about this recently, about the men I know, men my age, men who by any outside measure have done well. They have jobs, families, a house, a life that looks the way a life is supposed to look. And yet, there is this quiet thing, this low hum underneath everything. Like something is slightly off. Not broken, not dramatic, just off. And most of them don't talk about it. Not because they don't feel it, but because they don't have the words for it yet. That's what I want to talk about today. That thing, that hum, that quiet shift. Because I think it's one of the most important things that happens to a man in his life. And almost nobody prepares for it. You spend your 20s building, your 30s proving you can do it, proving you made the right choices, proving the life you chose is the right one. And then something happens around 40. You stop. Not consciously. It's not a decision. It's more like the energy that was driving all that proving, that energy quietly runs out. And in that silence, a question appears. Not what do I want to achieve? Something deeper, something quieter. Is this it? And at the moment that question arrives, everything shifts. Because it's not really a question about your job or your marriage or your bank account. It's a question about your whole life, about who you actually are. Underneath all the roles you've been playing. But here is the strange part. Most men think this feeling is a warning sign, a symptom of something wrong. So they fix it, like they fix things. They change jobs, they buy things, run more. They look for the problem on the outside. But the real reason that feeling arises has nothing to do with the outside. It has to do with a very specific moment in a man's psychology, one that almost no one talks about, where the identity you spent 20 years building starts to feel like someone else's clothes. You're still wearing them, but they don't quite fit anymore. And most men never notice this. They just feel the discomfort and spend years trying to fix the wrong thing. Here is what I think is actually happening. When you're young, identity is built from the outside in. You absorb what your family expects. what culture says success looks like, what a man is supposed to be. And you build yourself according to those blueprints. It's not fake, it's real. You lived it. But at some point, usually after 40, something new starts building from the inside out. And those two versions of you don't always match. The man the world sees and the man who exists underneath that. And this is where things become interesting. Because most men don't recognize this as growth. They recognize this as a loss. They feel like they're falling apart, like something is being taken from them. But what's actually happening is different. What's actually happening is that the scaffolding is coming down because the building underneath it is finally strong enough to stand on its own. And something changes after 40 that I don't think gets talked about honestly enough. Your relationship with time. When you're young, time feels like something you have, an unlimited resource. You will figure it out later. You will change later. You'll be yourself later. After 40, and I think for most men it happens slowly, quietly, time starts to feel like something you are in. Not holding, not managing, just moving through. And that shift changes everything about what feels important. The meetings that used to feel urgent don't. The approval that used to matter so much doesn't. The version of success you were chasing starts to feel slightly abstract. And what comes forward instead are the things you kept putting off, the things you told yourself you'd get to. And there's this quiet grief in that. Not dramatic, not loud, just quiet. Psychologists call this the second half of life. But that phrase doesn't quite capture it. Because it's not just about time. It's about a fundamental shift in what your psyche is asking of you. In the first half of life, the work is adaptation. You adapt to the world. You find your place. You build. In the second half, the work is something else entirely. The work is excavation. You start to go inward. Not because you chose to, but because something in you demands it. And this is where most men struggle, because nobody taught them how to do that. Men are taught to produce, to achieve, to fix. Going inward doesn't feel like any of those things. It feels like weakness, or confusion, or failure. But it's none of those things. It's actually the most important work a man can do in his life. And almost no one tells him that. Most men never notice that shift until they are already exhausted from fighting it. So let me ask you something, not rhetorically. Actually, ask yourself this. Is there something you've been feeling lately that you haven't been able to name? A restlessness, a flatness, a quiet dissatisfaction that exists even when everything looks fine on the outside. Because if there is, that's not failure. That's a signal. That's your own psychology trying to get your attention, trying to tell you something has shifted and the old map doesn't fit the new territory anymore. And the question isn't how to get rid of that feeling. The question is, what is it pointing toward? Because underneath that discomfort, underneath the restlessness and the quiet, there's usually something real, a value you've been neglecting, a version of yourself you set aside to get things done, something you actually want from your life that got buried under everything you were supposed to want. Most men never ask that question. Not because they don't feel it, but because they don't know they are allowed to. The truth about life after 40 is not what people say it is. It's not that life gets harder. It's not that it's too late. It's not even that men go through some kind of crisis. The truth is that life after 40 is where a man finally has enough experience to stop building a life someone else designed for him and start building something that actually fits who he is. But that only happens if he is willing to sit with discomfort long enough to hear what it's saying. And that takes a kind of courage that's different from anything he needed before. Not the courage to climb, the courage to stop, to look around, to actually listen. And that's the thing nobody tells you. Not because it's a secret, but because you can only hear it when you're ready. And most men, the ones who feel that quiet hum, are more ready than you think. I think about this a lot when I am out working. How strange it is to spend the first half of your life becoming someone and then spend the second half slowly finding out who that someone actually is. There's something beautiful about that, even when it's uncomfortable. Maybe especially then. Because the discomfort means you're still paying attention, still asking, still willing to look. And I think that matters more than most men realize.